Let's talk about what you and the legislature in Mississippi is doing, because I'm sure I don't need to tell you, Mississippi this week became the state with the worst number of coronavirus deaths per capita. In fact, if Mississippi were its own country, you would be second in the world only to Peru in terms of deaths per capita. That's a horrible, horrible, heartbreaking statistic. So with all due respect, Governor, your way is failing. Are you going to try to change anything to change this horrible statistic from what you're doing already?
Yeah, well, obviously, in Mississippi, our legislature is a part-time legislature. Sometimes I wonder if in America, if our Congress was part-time, we wouldn't be in a better position. But let's talk a little bit about
better position than
Mississippi
what?
And where
Your
we
state
are
is
with the virus.
second worst in the world. I mean, how can you say that?
Let's talk about where we are and why. Well, Jake, let's talk about where we are and why we are there. In large part, just like the summer of 2020, it was the Sun Belt states that saw the initial surge from the Delta variant. It started, the first state that I saw seeing upticks was Missouri, and then it was Arkansas, and then it was Louisiana, and now it's Mississippi. Our surge went from less than 100 cases per day in Mississippi to 3,600, much like what happened in the country of Israel, like what happened in the country of Great Britain and in England. We saw a very quick spike, and now we're seeing a very quick decline in the total number of cases. We spiked at about 3,600. We're now half of that in our state. As you know, right. Unfortunately, fatalities is a lagging indicator when it comes to the virus. It is a lagging indicator, and so timing has as much to do with that statistic that you used as anything else. As we see in 2021, what occurred in 2020 as the Delta variant moves around the country, and it's going to happen. The president wants you to believe that the Delta variant is only affecting Republicans in red states.
Change anything?
That's just not true. That is not a fact. That is just not true. And so what you're going to see.
So, Governor, my point is this: you compared yourself to Israel.
The Delta variant is going to continue to move around the country, and you're going to see fatalities rise in other states. And so here's what we need to focus on, Jake. Okay, let's focus on this.
But my question is, what are you going to do to change this?
The best thing for Americans to do to protect themselves from the virus, and again, we believe in personal responsibility. Individual Americans and individual Mississippians can make good decisions to take care of themselves. The best thing that Americans can do, number one, is to talk to their doctor about potentially getting the vaccine, because in our state, some 89% of those hospitalized and some 87% of those who are of the deaths are actually coming from those who are unvaccinated. So the number one thing that you can do is you can talk to your doctor about getting vaccinated. The number two thing is, if you get the virus, and this is very important, if you get the virus, please talk to your doctor about the monoclonal antibody treatment.
You're not going to change anything.
That is the best way in which to do that. And unfortunately, the Biden administration continues to try to reduce the allocation to red states like Mississippi and Florida of that monoclonal antibody treatment.
Governor,
it's outrageous.
Governor, if Mississippi were a country, you would have the second worst per capita death toll in the world. And I'm saying, are you going to do anything to try to change that?
Jake, as I mentioned earlier, deaths, unfortunately, are a lagging indicator. Our total number of cases went from 100 to 3,600, and over the last 2 weeks has declined. They've been cut in half, from 3,600 to 1,800. When you wanted me to come on 3 or 4 weeks ago, you want to talk about our number of cases, and then you want to talk about our hospitalizations. Now you want to talk about a lagging indicator, which is sad, and it's
I'm trying
horrible.
to talk about dead Mississippians is what I'm trying to talk about.
All 9,000 Mississippians that have passed away. But let's put this in perspective, Jake. I mean, the reality is Mississippi accounts for 1% of the U.S. population. We account for 1.1% of the total number of cases in America, and we account for 1.29% of the total number of fatalities in America. And so the reality is the Delta variant is very transmissible, and it is moving around the country. If you want to talk about cases right now, talk about Kentucky or West Virginia or what's happening in North Carolina are moving into Southern Virginia.
I'm asking
This
you about
virus
your
is very
state, but I'm not going to
transmissible.
ask you about West Virginia or Kentucky. I'm going to ask you about your state, and I'm just saying you seem to be very, very activated when it comes to fighting the mandate from the federal government. And I understand the arguments you're making, but what President Biden is trying to do is save lives. Now, you can think it's bad policy or it's unconstitutional, and that's fine. We can have that discussion. We already have. But he's trying to save lives. I'm saying to you, your way's not working. And whether you say it's a lagging indicator or whatever your argument is, Mississippi now has, if it were its own country, the second worst per capita death rate in the world, behind only Peru. And I'm saying, are you going to try to do anything to change that? And I'm not hearing an answer.
I hope he dies soon.
Sucks. Yeah.